going to be talking about ocean life today. So let's get to it. There are three main groups of ocean life. Marine is another name for ocean. Plankton, these are the guys that float or drift freely near the ocean surface. They're microscopic. There are two basic groups, the zooplankton and phytoplankton. Zooplankton act like animals, and phytoplankton do photosynthesis for their food. Nekton is your second main group. This is your free swimmers, think basic fish. And benthos, they're your bottom dwellers. So think about the guys that you can see hanging out at the bottom here. And we'll talk about each of those a little bit more detail. So we're going to start with the bottom dwellers here, and we're going to actually begin as you walk out from the shoreline, around actually where the shoreline where the tides go in and out. We're going to start there. Then we're going to kind of slide on down, and we're going to go into each of these areas here. We're going to talk about the bathyal zone, the abyssal zone, the hadal zone, what the heck you're going to find in the deep sea trench. So we're going to kind of hang out with organisms that are hanging out at or on the ocean floor or right above it. And then we're going to go out and say, hey, what's hanging out around here? And what's hanging out around here? So we're going to go into a little more detail in these other areas. So the environment that's hanging out on the ocean floor, that's called your benthic environment. And the first one is where you're going to be literally kind of hanging out on the beach, and you're in the area where the tide comes in and the tide leaves. That's called your intertidal zone. Low tide and high tide. And these guys who live here, they are major survivors, because not only do they have to be able to survive when there's water, but they got to survive when there's not water. So they've got to be able to do a lot of different things. They have to be able to kind of deal with water and non-water environments. So some of these guys are going to attach themselves to rocks like starfish, so they don't get swiped out into the ocean. Some of them are going to have tough shells to protect against sunlight and waves. Some of these guys are going to burrow into the sand, and some of these guys are going to be photosynthetic plants who don't have root systems, but they got something called a holdfast, which allows it to grip onto rocks, so necessarily it doesn't necessarily get, kind of drug out into the ocean. So we're in the intertidal zone right in here, so now we're going to kind of go on over to the next area, which is your sublittoral zone. So now you're kind of at the edge of the continental shelf. It's a very stable environment. The temperature and the pressure and the light are fairly constant. You don't got some crazy changes going on. It's actually pretty decent here. You got plants and animals living in the upper 100 in this area meters, and this area also includes coral. So this is a life-filled area. All right, now we're going to keep going a little deeper now, getting away from that, right above that continental shelf area. We're going to go into the bathyal zone. So now we're going to get to the area that is the edge of the continental shelf, where it's warm and comfortable and kind of a great place to live, down to the abyssal plain. So now we're getting to an area that doesn't really have sunlight, so you're not going to find plants here. It's going to be cold. You're going to have more pressure. It's going to be kind of a rough area to live. You can see some jellyfish hanging out here. Look at the little guy over on the top there. Some of you guys who watch Finding Nemo, that's your anglerfish. He kind of looks a little bit different from Finding Nemo. And you can find octopus here. So now we're going to go deeper. So we've kind of hung out here. We've gone through this area. We've kind of gone through this area here. And now we're going into the abyssal area. It is part of the abyssal plain. You got crabs, you got sponges, tube worms, black smokers, and some really wild looking life here. Look at some of this stuff. You think here because it's really cold, no light, no pressure, major pressure, that life wouldn't be here. But look at this stuff. This is like something out of a science fiction movie. All right, now we're going to go even deeper. We're going to go into the hadal zone. Deepest. This includes your trenches, 6,000 to 7,000 meters. It's going to include things like sponges and clams And we are finding more and more life here as our technology is getting here and getting samples. And it's crazy. We just were not expecting life to be able to do this, but you know, it is. Now we're going to kind of hang out into the open water area. So now we're going to look into what they call the pelagic realm. This is where you're going to find what you normally think of in life in the ocean. I think most of us think of cute little dolphins and porpoises and whales and, you know, your swordfish. And this is kind of what you are. This is the area for it. So we're going to talk about the different levels of this pelagic realm. So you got two basic zones of the pelagic environment. You got your neritic and the oceanic. Your neritic covers the open waters above the continental shelf. So once again, this is shallow, it's warm. This is where you're going to find the largest concentration of your marine life. And then you got your oceanic. This has the volume of water that's over the ocean floor, except for the area over the continental shelf. It's colder, high pressure. Organisms are much more spread out. You find your giant squids and your whales here. And so it ends.